Speak through these words if they're worthy. Lord, if they are not, speak in spite of them. Amen. Welcome back to our first physical in-person worship here at Canterbury House for the new semester. Thanks for being here. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. So that's the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible that I had just read. The Message Bible version of that passage reads like this: You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being full of care of others, you find yourselves cared for. Guess what? I had a holy moment this week. And I didn't even realize it until I sat down to start to work on this sermon, which I got started on late because we thought we were going to be a Trinity. So I was exegeting, which is not a medical term. It's a big word meaning that I was reading stuff to help me interpret the passages so that I could put a message together. And in my exegesis, I came across the writings of the Reverend Dr. Bruce Epperly. He's a scholar, a theologian, and he is ordained in both the United Church of Christ and Disciples of Christ. And this week, as part of his summation of the readings we've had today, he wrote this: If you want to live in harmony with God's vision for you, walk with the lost and lonely, helping them find their way as God's beloved children. Walk with the lost and lonely, helping them find their way as God's children. And when I read that, I remembered my God moment. It popped up in my head. And so I remembered at that moment, it was Thursday afternoon, and I was leaving Canterbury House for the day. And I was walking down 7th Street so I could get to where my car was parked on 4th Street. There was not a lot of parking in a lot of places that day, but a few had been plowed and had popped up. And I found that one near Trinity. So I parked there, and I did work most of the day at Trinity. And then at the end of that day, I thought, well, I'd better head over to Canterbury House, because we had just learned that Sacred Arts at Trinity had been canceled. So I thought, well, I better get the place ready. And I needed to get bulletins printed and tidied up a little bit. But I had to slog here through the snow on sidewalks, most of which were uncleared. I was halfway here, and I began to regret making the slog. No, it isn't far. 5 minutes, 7 tops on a nice day. But as I said, the plowing, the sidewalks between here and there had left a lot to be desired. And so I'm carrying all the stuff that I always carry with me. I have on about 12 layers of clothing, and I'm walking on that slightly packed but still kind of loose snow that hasn't been plowed, and you see footprints in it, and you try to step in those thinking it's steady, but it gives way when you step on it, and it sends your feet into different directions. It's fun. They should make a dance called the slightly packed snow dance. Now, at least on ice, right? You just do the penguin the whole time. You're not fooled by the appearance of the ice. You know it's super slick, but that slightly packed snow looks like and gives you that false sense of walkability. So you put your foot down. I'm worn out. The walk was physically taxing. It was cold. The footing, I'm having to spend an awful lot of energy just to stay upright. I don't want snow in my boots. I want to stay upright, and I really don't want snow in my boots. I'd almost rather fall onto some soft snow than to get snow in my boots. I'm carrying everything in the world because I must do that at all times. So by the time I got here, I was ready for a nap. Luckily, we have that Papasan chair. I could just do that, but I didn't have time. So I got in here and I hurriedly did the things I did. Like I said, tidied up a little bit, and I printed the bulletins and I checked the food levels. Then, after about an hour, I put back on all of my layers and all of my accessories and all of my bags. And I very unexcitedly began to head back down 7th Street so I could make my way to 4th Street. And so as I'm going here, I got in front of La Casa next door, which took me about 12 minutes. And I saw a woman slightly older than me. She was standing in front of Chabad House. I say slightly older. She was probably 28. No, she was slightly older than me. And she was looking all around and she looked kind of confused, maybe. Maybe she wanted to knock on Chabad's door. So as I walked closer toward her en route to Indiana Avenue, I thought I would ask her if she needed help. But as I got closer enough to her to ask, she turned away from me. So I figured she didn't want any help. But as I passed her, looking forward, she's right behind me, she asked in a soft voice that I almost did not hear, "Do you think you could help me get across?" I almost didn't hear her. But I get it, the sidewalks are terrible, but the edges of the crosswalks, those haven't been touched. All you see at the crosswalk is the 2 or 3 foot high piled up snow that they've plowed from the street. No one has gotten a shovel to most of the crosswalks. And then in there, you see a narrow line of footprints where people have slogged through. So again, it's more of that soft snow. And you think, well, I'll boldly go where other people have gone before, but it's treacherous. It's really hard to navigate those, especially if you don't want to get snow in your boots, every bit as much as you don't want to fall. "Do you think you could help me get across?" "Sure, I can." And so we walked up to that crossing point there in front of Chabad is that Fess? And I went first. I went through that narrow, wobbly passage. Felt like an Indiana Jones. That's a dated culture reference, isn't it? And I turned back toward her and I let her grab my arm and my shoulder. We didn't really talk about how you do this, and I don't remember, but so I let her grab my arm and my shoulder, and she steadied herself and she came all the way through, and we succeeded. It was like this joyous moment of shared accomplishment. Yay. And then I was ready to help her navigate the other side over here by the Lutheran church. But she said, "I'm just going to walk in the street." All right. I mean, they are plowed, right? But I mean, there was traffic. And I cringed because we're walking kind of side by side. And I cringed because a couple of cars came up behind her. I thought they were going to do something mean, but they waited for the opposing traffic to pass and they drove around her. And I was so relieved. There weren't any close calls and nobody honked or shouted angrily at her. And then when we got to Indiana and 7th, we parted ways. She kept going down 7th and I started down Indiana. And I don't remember clearly if we said anything in parting. At one point prior to that, she had thanked me. But then as I was crossing 7th, I started to chide myself a little bit. What I did not mention to you was that when I first noticed her in front of Chabad House, I had a very busy back and forth going on in my head. It was that brain chatter that isn't productive and can be monotonous. Sometimes it's like that self-critique that you didn't ask for, but you engage with anyway. But in this case, though, I was arduously debating with myself what exact footpath I would take down what streets, on what side of which street, to get to my car that had the greatest amount of plowed walkways so that I would not fall and that I would not get snow in my boots. And while I had that debate raging busily, I was also complaining. I had multiple conversations going on. It's busy in here. Why did I think it was a good idea to walk over to Canterbury House for 1 hour on a day like today anyway? And why did Trinity wait until so late in the week to cancel Sacred Hearts? And what in the heck am I going to preach about? And does my wife need me to stop at Kroger before I get home? And then I saw her. And interestingly enough, her presence pulled me out of my head and my self-absorbed pettiness that I was in, because I was trying to ignore the world around me, apparently. And when I saw her looking around, I debated about whether I would ask if she needed my help. You know, do you ask or do you wait for them to ask? I confess, though, I was hoping she'd say no. Just a confession. Because I was doing all this great thinking about heading home, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time deviating from my now very well orchestrated plan on how to get to my car and home. It was kind of a Sheldon Cooper moment. And I confess that when she looked away, again, I'm confessing, I did feel relieved. But when she asked me, "Do you think you could help me get across?" I was transformed. I ignored my selfish internal dialogue and I turned back and I said, "Sure." And I waited for her to catch up to me. And then we headed toward the ravine called the crosswalk. And I could tell that I was doing the right thing, doing the kind thing. It felt good. It felt right. It felt like I was being my true self. I felt transformed from this to that. And then it hit me. She was being Christ to me. Now, we think of people being Christ to us when we're in need and they do something for us. But just as often, Christ comes to us in people who have needs as well. And then I heard the passage, walk with the lost and the lonely, helping them find their way as God's children. Do you think you could help me get across? And what I think now I was really being asked was if I thought God could get across to me through her in her moment of need, because I had put God and the world around me on mute. It's easy to do that these days, to go on and ignore, because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot going on for us to pay attention to and for us to wonder, when do you and I do or say what? So it helps to take a break from that. But that wasn't even what I was doing. Thursday, I was lamenting my first world problems, and I was preferring to ruminate on those as if that was fixing anything, and hoping to God that she didn't need any help, so that I could keep on ruminating so exquisitely. Again, Sheldon Cooper moment. I was, as the saying goes, a man wrapped up in himself, making a very small bundle. And for whatever reason, Jesus was ready for me to be and to do something else. And so now 2 lines from the Message version of the Beatitudes are speaking to me. There's the one I mentioned, you're blessed when you care. At the moment of being full of care for others, you find yourselves cared for, which is a variation of the line, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. But now I'm also getting another line in my head from the Beatitudes and the Message. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your mind and heart, put right. Then you can see God in the outside world, which is blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And at least for a moment, another person had allowed me to see God. And I heard the words of Bruce Epperly, walk with the lost and lonely, helping them find their way as God's children. And so I thank God for this woman, whose name I never got, with whom I was walking, for helping me find my way as a child of God. Guide us, God, away from the noise of the world and the noise of our minds to you, especially the you we see in others. Amen.